Okay, welcome to Roman numeral 7, Politics of the 1920s. In the 1920s, we have two administrations, the Harding and Coolidge administration. So let's begin. Let's look at the Harding administration. The first thing that should be coming to your mind is return to normalcy. Second thing coming to mind is scandal. Now, number one, return to normalcy. We're talking foreign policy and domestic policy. It was said the Republicans, quote, forgot nothing and learned nothing while out of office. Thus, there was a return to laissez-faire, a pre-progressive philosophy. Or was it? Reflected in a more open alliance with big business, direct government aid, more openly hostile to labor. Progressive legislation was not repealed. And this is important because you're going to see this. Who makes the laws? It's not going to, the progressives put in place all these reforms. But now that the Republicans come in, they own Congress, they own the administration, they could repeal them all. The fact that they don't means they cement those reforms in. You're going to see this repeated again after the New Deal. New Deal legislation comes in, then in the 1950s, with the ability to repeal all those reforms, the 1950s Republicans don't do so. So again, we can compare and contrast. So business leaders were in charge of agencies. They were in the positions in the cabinet. Quote, we care not what laws the Democrats pass, as long as we are permitted to administer them. So they don't nullify the laws by getting rid of them. They nullify the laws by not enforcing them. Harding appoints to regulatory agencies are said to have set the country back 25 years. Wartime agencies were dismantled. So here you got a list of all kinds of stuff going on here with the Esch-Cummings Act, government fixed rates, all profits over 6%. Again, this is some hardcore SFI. Excuse me. Veterans benefits. Let's take a look at, under the Harding administration, what happened with veterans benefits. Established in 1921 under Harding, the American Legion was formed in 1919 to lobby for veterans' interests. And again, I would compare it to the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic, the weight that veterans will have in voting. They wanted compensation for lost wages while they were in the Army. You get opposition from Republican Congress, and thus you get past the Adjusted Compensation Act. Patriotism, bought and paid for, is not patriotism. So Congress overrode his veto a few days later and provides a paid-up insurance policy. $1.25 per day overseas, $1 stationed in the States. Supreme Court hostility to progressive measures also will not only be in the 20s, but stretch into the 30s under FDR. Harding appoints 4 of the 9 justices and their lifetime appointments. Frequent use of injunctions will be used by business to hold back labor. And again, the theme of consolidation hits here. What's my SFI? More than 400 trade associations are established. The purpose was to fix prices, pool information, standardize wages. And the government doesn't interfere to prevent this. The net effect will be that monopolies were more widespread in the 1920s than they had been in 1900. So SFI 1929, 594 corporations controlled 53% of the wealth of the country. 20 largest banks controlled 27%. I wonder what those numbers are today. Now, here is some SFI known as the Ohio Gang. Basically, his drinking buddies that hung out in Washington, D.C. on K Street. As you know, you rent a house on K Street. Politicians would be up and down the street. drinking, smoking down in the basements, entertaining women. Now, most of them are worthless, and even some scandalous. But there were three good minds that we're going to look at. You got Mellon, Hoover, and Charles Evans Hughes, all three quality people. There's the house on K Street. And here's our guys. Andrew Mellon, of course, from Mellon Bank. Reduces regulations on business. Herbert Hoover, famous from how he dealt with the Belgian and then the United States food during World War I. Looking at volunteerism to advance his agenda. Not passing regulations, but voluntarily asking business leaders to help. And they do. Hey, it's the Roaring 20s. Things are great. He's going to also ask this when he's president, when the Great Depression hits, and that volunteerism isn't going to work so well. Okay, we got Charles Ford's, on the other hand, wasted millions of taxpayers' dollars. And then you got two criminals right here. These guys, you got the Elk Hills and Teapot Dome scandals. Tax policy. Mellon believed the trickle-down theory. Program was to cut expenditures, cut taxes on the wealthy, repeal excess profits tax, just get rid of taxes. Able to reduce estate tax, corporate tax fall as well. Tariff policy. 1922, you get the foreign incomer tariff. These are what kind of tariffs? Protective tariffs. The ultimate of these, though, you're going to have to know, is the Hawley-Smoot tariff. That's right there in the top three tariffs you got to know for the entire history of the United States. More than 1,000 amendments added, raises rates to almost 60%, right at the height of the worldwide Great Depression, and this just shuts down international trade as retribution is in the form of tariffs by other countries. Scandals. The problem is Harding's a schmuck. It's not that he's corrupt, it's that he's not smart enough to keep corrupt people away from his government. Quote, I'm a man of limited talents from a small town. I don't seem to grasp that I'm president. I like to put it as he's like the tourist glaring up in wonderment, walking through Manhattan. Ooh, Empire State Building. Just everybody knows he's a tourist. Everybody knew Harding wasn't qualified. And this quote pretty much says it all. John, I can't make a damn thing out of this tax problem. I listen to one side and they seem right. And then God, I talk to the other side and they seem just as right. I know somewhere there's a book that will give me the truth, but hell, I couldn't read the book. I know somewhere there's an economist who knows the truth, but I don't know where to find him, and I haven't the sense to know him and trust him when I find him. God, what a job. Now, that's a problem. That's the most difficult about being president. You got to make these calls, and he's just not capable of doing so. So your author, Bailey, says the difference between Harding and Washington was Washington could not tell a lie, and Harding could not tell a liar. While as a scandal-ridden administration, few seem to care. You'll have Veterans Bureau, where Charles Forbes pockets $250 million from contract kickbacks. You have Charles Kramer commits suicide. Jesse Smith, the fixer in the Justice Department, commits suicide. And then Harry Daugherty, Attorney General, could pay a fee to obtain non-enforcement of prohibition. So this meant bootleggers could pay a fee to avoid the law. Incredible. If you want to know more about these scandals and you want to be ready for a hardcore scandal question, look these up for the Land of Fives. You got the Grant administration, you got the Harding administration, and you will have the Nixon administration. Most famous of these was the Teapot Dome scandal. Teapot Dome is a mountain there it is. Mountain right here in Wyoming. It looks like a teapot. Now, under it, you're going to have oil. We keep the oil there unpumped, but ready to go in case of war. That's, in case our Navy, we go to war, we're going to need some oil. High government officials take bribes for selling off leases. Authorizes unbid leases to Henry Sinclair and Edward Doney. Fall receives $100,000. Now, there's a problem. I hate crooks, but dang, I hate stupid crooks. He's going to give away all that oil and only get $100,000. What a schmuck. And you can see the officials trying to run away from this scandal because it will crush you. Now, all of this, Harding's largely unaware. You can see it looks like a teapot right here. There's Albert Fall. Guy who's busted will go to prison. Again, another quote. Newly directed Warren Harding was tall, handsome, and popular, but he had a mediocre mind and he did not like to hurt people's feelings. Neither could he detect the corruption of his cabinet. So you got Fall and Doherty, who took over reins as Attorney General. These two became the worst of the scandalous cabinet members. So let's look at the two scandals, the other one being called Elk Hills. And we just talked about them. Harding, largely unaware of the scandals, quote, "My God, what a hell of a job. I have no problem with my enemies, but my damn friends, my goddamn friends, they're the ones who keep me walking the floor at night." Now, right as this scandal is starting to boil, right as he's making press conferences, it's just about to hit. Oh my God, is he guilty? And he's standing up for his boys. He is. Fall's not guilty. He knows it. He dies. He has a stroke, heart attack. What was it? Coolidge, his vice president, is sworn in by his own father, who is a judge and minister. And we go to the Coolidge administration. First thing you need to know is all the scandals about to hit. You think it would smear Calvin Coolidge. Not so. Calvin is so clean, he makes Boy Scouts look dirty. This guy's got a rep. Everybody knows he's not part of it. So let's talk about Coolidge. I guess he's the perfect guy at this time to buck up the reputation of the White House. Because this guy, no scandal's going to touch him. He is very pro business, and he was known as Silent Cal. Much more so after the death of his son in 1924, which, makes sense, People aren't too thrilled with life when their sons die. So anyways, there's a very famous joke where there's a young woman sitting next to Coolidge at a dinner party and confided him she had bet she could get at least 3 words of conversation from him. Without looking at her, he quietly retorted, "You lose." So if we're going to look at the character of him, let's look at his quotes. The business of America is business. Now, if you're going to talk about Cal, there it is. The business of America is business. That would be his campaign slogan when he finally runs for election on his own. Quote, "The man who builds a factory builds a temple. The man who works there worships there." I mean, come on, this guy's pure business. Quote, "If the federal government should go out of business, the common run of people would not detect the difference for a considerable length of time." Again, stressing that he thinks the federal government should have very little say, laissez-faire. Quote, "4/5 of all of our troubles in this life would disappear if we would only sit down and be quiet." And Silent Cal. And last but not least, quote, "I never got in trouble from anything I didn't say." And that's a pretty good quote. Okay. So Ironically, though, Silent Kale, his quotes define his character and philosophy. Election of 1924. Republicans ride the prosperity bandwagon. I mean, there's a great economy. Re-election's almost certain. His campaign slogan for real was "Keep cool with Coolidge." Democrats go with Al Smith and William McAdoo, and they kill each other off. John W. Davis wins the 103rd ballot. Charles Bryan will be the vice president candidate. So John Davis will win it because Al Smith can't do it by his enemy killing him off. Robert La Follette organizes the Progressive Party. Outcome, Coolidge wins in a blowout. La Follette, though, with 5 million votes and 13 electoral votes, is certainly mentionable when you're talking about third parties. How come no mention of domestic program? Laissez-faire. He doesn't believe they should have one. So let's look at the election of 28. Oops, I'm sorry. There is the election of 24. Davis, of course, gets the solid South, as Democrats always will. But this is a clean sweep, except for La Follette's home state getting the progressive vote. Now, 1928, wow, it's not even that solid anymore. You're going to see Hoover picking up North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, this is Virginia. Wow. Hoover was popular. I mean, what he did in World War I was incredible. He was a good guy. And being Secretary of Commerce, he's the one getting credit for the great economy. So what we'll pick up with next is foreign policy.